On a dark, wooded road, you wander through the night. You're familiar with your surroundings as you step so surely on, but tonight is different. The snap of a twig catches you off guard, and you begin to hear something. It's low at first, but there's something there. You know you can hear it. Though the fear within you courses through your being, screaming for you to run and find safety, something else is there inside, compelling your curiosity and making you hesitate. Something inside wants to know. You're listening to Whispers in the Night.
Hey everyone, it's Sang. I'd like to welcome you all to a very special mini-sode, our very first True Paranormal Story. In our last episode, I put out the call to hear all of your stories of the strange and unusual by writing into us here at trueparanormalstory@gmail.com for your chance to be included in our new and ongoing segment. And tonight we're going to do just that. I'm here to feature a listener's personal experience of the paranormal and the unexplained. But before we get into that, I'm going to give you all a plug. We have merch, or should I say, Whispers in the Night has merch, and you can find it on TeePublic. That's right, you can find our sweet original logos created by the one and only Punch Gut, as well as one by the very talented Constancia Nobre. You can find them all on TeePublic. Now, every purchase supports the show in a number of ways. First of all, a percentage of every purchase goes directly toward what I do here. Next, I'll also have you out there representing our sweet swag, which will probably make other like-minded individuals be like, awesome shirt, Whispers in the Night? What's that? And lucky you get to share our show. And lastly, just kind of a no-brainer, you'll probably be a lot happier and better off knowing that you're wearing something that represents something that you love. So you should definitely buy Whispers in the Night merch on TeePublic. I'll leave a link in the show notes as well as on social media. Okay, now, like I mentioned in our show's opener, we have our very first true paranormal story to share with you. This story comes from someone who I have the privilege of speaking to in person. Now, she was willing to sit and have her stories recorded and shared for you here on the show. So without further ado, this is Carolyn, and here are her stories. I hope you all enjoy listening to them as much as I have.
I was born in Texas in the early 40s, so I grew up in the time of UFOs when everyone was seeing UFOs and were worried about aliens invading the world. So it was kind of uppermost in a lot of people's minds. And by the time I had my first experience seeing a UFO, I was a teenager. I was 16, and a friend of mine and I we'd gone out, like teenagers do, into the country, found a wonderful road that you could drive as fast as you wanted and fly through the air. And as we came up on top of one of the hills, there was an oil refinery close to where I lived, and we came up on top of the hill right before we got to the refinery. And kind of up above the refinery were some really unusual lights that we didn't normally see. There's always a lot of lights around the refinery, and so you kind of expect that. But these were behaving in a manner that was unexpected because they were rather bobbing around. They weren't specific. They weren't any specific shape. They were just sort of lights bobbing around in an unusual manner. So we stopped the car and stopped to watch. And because this was a particularly popular road with teenagers, there were 2 or 3 other cars had also stopped. So we sat, all of us, probably 8, people all together sat and watched these lights as they danced around in the sky, bobbing and turning and twirling. They just had no distinct pattern, nothing that was discernible, until all of a sudden they just stopped dead still, and one by one shot up in the air and were gone. Now, we all, of course, got out of our cars. We talked about it and couldn't believe we had actually seen what we had seen. And so all went home. Next day, found out that there had been numerous calls to the police department in town, wondering what the lights above the oil refinery were. And as we lived close to Amarillo, Texas, where there was an Air Force base. So obviously everybody's saying, oh, it's the Air Force, they're doing something, they're doing experiments, and all of that type of rumors went around. So no one really knew what they were. The Air Force claimed they were doing nothing. They had not sent any airplanes out. There were no weather balloons. There was nothing. It's supposed to be in the air. So it was a mystery. I am convinced, the friend of mine that was with me was also convinced that it was a UFO. It was some alien civilization had decided to give us a big show. And that's where I left it. I didn't really think a lot about it. I talked to people about it, but UFOs, people are a little skeptical. When you say, I saw a UFO, they kind of look at you a little strangely. So I didn't really talk about it a lot, and kind of went on my merry way, grew up, got married, moved to Minnesota. And when my husband worked nights, my children were probably, 3, 6, and 8, 9. I was sitting there one night in my living room, and all of a sudden, everything stopped in my house. Everything. The clock stopped. The TV quit. There was nothing. No movement of anything. No electrical appliance was working. And it was dead quiet. And it was about probably 9 o'clock in the evening. And I went out on my deck and stepped to the side and looked around my house, and there was a peculiarly shaped something flying above the trees in south of my house, where there was a Christmas tree farm there. And this, whatever it was, flew over the top of the trees and straight up in the air and was gone. And as soon as it went out of sight, everything in my house came back on. I was a little perplexed. I called my next-door neighbor and asked her if anything strange had happened at their house, which you would assume if it happened at my house, it happened at their house. And she just asked me if I'd been drinking a lot of wine. So I obviously didn't mention that a lot to people either, and just kind of let it sit for a good many more years. And then several years later, I'm beginning to think that maybe people attract these sort of sightings. And I don't know if it's because I truly believe in them or if it just happened to be circumstances. But I was going into town in broad daylight on my merry way, going to pick up my kids from school a little later, and that would have been probably in 1970, 72, 73, somewhere in that time frame. And I all of a sudden saw up in the sky these 4, and I hate to say it, but they were cigar-shaped objects bobbing around in the sky. I stopped my car, got out of my car to watch them as they bobbed around, and they just sort of jumped. They didn't do anything. And they were very, very large. They just sort of bobbed around. They were not a particularly bright light, just little bobbing cigar-shaped objects. And I watched them for a long time. A gentleman stopped behind me in a pickup and got out of his pickup and was watching them, and I do regret I never knew who it was. I didn't go and ask him his name, so I have no collaboration for this sighting at all. But we watched it for a very, very long time, and finally the ones on each end just shot straight off into the air and were gone. The two in the middle shot straight up in the air and were gone. And that was the last that I saw of them. Now that's the last time I've ever had any type of a UFO experience. I don't know if it's because I've sort of not looking for that sort of thing anymore, or maybe whoever was trying to show me something just decided I wasn't paying enough attention. But those are my stories. I truly believe that I saw UFOs and hope that someday I may see some again.
Thank you all for tuning in. I just wanted to give a very special thanks to Carolyn for sharing her story on air. You know, she told me these stories some time ago in person, and I was completely blown away. When I shared the announcement of this new segment in the last episode, it was a no-brainer to kick things off with what she had to say. Did you like it? Do you have a story of your own to share? TrueParanormalStory@gmail.com. That's where you can let us know about the strange and unexplained things that have happened to you. Now, I'm not going to go take all the credit for this. True Paranormal Story is the brainchild of a major support for the show and the co-founder of my paranormal research team, Nikki Tarango. If you want to know who to thank, this is definitely her idea. Thanks, Nikki. So if you have something to share, if there's something strange happening in your home, something from your past, TrueParanormalStory@gmail.com. Your story could be the next featured. Whispers in the Night was written, mixed, and produced by myself. The show is brought to you by Midwest Made. It's my wife's shop for all things flair. Whether you want bows or bow ties, she can make them custom just for you. Hats, scarves, market bags, and more. Send your request to her today. She has yet to find something that she can't make. Check out the link to her shop in the show's notes. This show was also brought to you by supporters like Sammy Weisenin on Patreon. Thanks, Sammy, you've been a help from the very beginning. And finally, to every one of you who reaches out to me with your stunning thoughts, your reviews, and all of the terrifying topics I get in my inbox from week to week. Until next time, good night.